Hello and welcome to the Who the Fuck is in the Mirror podcast. I'm Angela Spooner, your host, emotional intelligence guide, trauma-informed coach, yoga instructor, confident, badass single mom of 3 amazing children, and founder of Unabashedly You. This podcast is all about using books, analogies, and metaphors to dive deep into who you really are to yourselves, not just as parents or some fictional version others made you out to be, right? But who the fuck you are. I want you to find your confidently badass, secure version of you that you lost along the way, or maybe you never even had in the first place because you were busy with everyone and everything else. Does that sound about right? So how about we get into the science of why we are a bunch of fucked up individuals who look in the mirror and don't even recognize the person that's staring back. Join me in the best journey you'll ever experience. Why, you may ask? Because it is the journey to transform your self-doubt, insecurity, and overall dysfunctional brain into self-aware, badass confidence and understanding. I hope you're as excited as I am because I cannot wait to get into this.
Welcome to the carnival. Welcome to the carnival.
Hey everyone, how's everybody feeling? Obviously, can't really, respond to me, but it's more of a, rhetorical question. I hope everybody's doing awesome. I'm really, really looking forward to this chapter. We're actually going to be separating it into 2 podcast episodes because I just fucking feel like I want to. So we're doing it. Okay, but seriously, I'm doing that because I think that this is a really good chapter and I just want to go deeper on it. So, that being said, chapter 6, losing your body, losing yourself. So, let's start out with a quote by Rainer Maria Rilke. I think that's how you say the last name. Letters to a Young Poet. Be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart and try to love the questions themselves. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer. So I read that and I was actually reading it, and I had to read it a few times to really understand what the fuck Rainer was trying to say, right? So I actually read it, and I read it to my boyfriend, and he was like, "What the fuck did you just say?" And I was like, "That's a good point," because I read it a few times, and I was like, "I'm just going to go ahead and talk about it once I understood it." And I was like, "Well, Angela, if you had to read it that many fucking times, you should probably explain it and break it down, right? So how about we break it down?" Because, as you know, I love to break it down like a James Brown. Just kidding. So she begins with saying, be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart and try to love the questions themselves. I know the first thought for me was, okay, so be patient and accept what comes, right? But then I read it again, more slowly, a few times, to be honest, and it became more clear and personal. We should never stop asking questions or mentally questioning things in life. But more than that, we need to accept and embrace all our mixed feelings, including uncertainty, anger, fear, rejection, love, acceptance, frustration, anxiousness, nervousness, embarrassment, boredom, all of these feelings pop up in our lives, and we have the choice to push them down, ignore them, shame ourselves, blame others for our unsolved feelings and emotions, or accept that your feelings are valid and deserve to be addressed, right? Right. See, she then continues on to say, we need to live the questions now. What the fuck does that mean, right? In other words, we need to stop pushing them down or ignoring or overanalyzing or overthinking things or simply shutting them down. That isn't to say you shouldn't figure it out. Okay, I don't want you to be like, oh, well, I don't have to figure anything out, right? Because everything will happen as it should. No, that's not what the fuck I'm saying. What I'm trying to say is that we spend so much time worrying about our past and our future, right? But what if living in the moment and simply accepting the thoughts and feelings as they are, from a movie viewpoint, taking our emotions out of it and simply noticing ourselves from a curious standpoint, what if that is what's trying to be said here, right? Because then the quote ends with, perhaps you will gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer. If we open our minds to the mysteries we have yet to solve about ourselves and our lives, then things will begin to unfold and we will be able to see the potential within ourselves that has been waiting to come out this whole time. Don't push to have questions answered or shut down because you can't answer them or have all these feelings or emotions solved right now, or just give up on those feelings and emotions altogether, right? Rather, what I'm saying is to accept that they are there. And if you don't have the answers right now, trust that you are noticing them and that they will be understood in their own time. I mean, this is easy enough to say, right? I mean, I can fucking say whatever I want. It's easy to say anything. But here's the thing. What about when we are being abused emotionally, physically, spiritually, sexually? How about neglected? So Kolk says that not being seen, not being known, and having nowhere to turn to feel safe is devastating at any age. He then goes on to talk about how it's worse for kids because they are still trying to figure things out. But here lies another problem. If we were never taught as children how to be loved, cared for, and appreciated, then how the fuck are we supposed to understand how to do the same for anyone else in the world, or even more, how we're supposed to hold and accept ourselves and grow? Because in our minds, we are still thinking like those middle school kids, right? Trying to figure their shit out. And we're just trying to figure our shit out, right? But we're adults, so we're held to more accountability. So how can we accept that things are just going to work out or even live our lives in a positive way when all we have to go off of is what we were told as children or how we were taught to cope and question things as children from the people who surrounded us when we were learning these things? Is it really possible to love the questions in our heart for all that is unsolved when all we have is a numb feeling from all the pain that we've experienced? Once we begin to lose our sensations and feelings in our body from being desensitized by the pain and trauma, we can then become addicted to self-harm. Now, I'm not just talking about harming yourself like picking, burning, hair pulling, or suicidal ideations, right? I am talking about anything we do in hopes of feeling again, right? We've lost our sensations and feelings in our body because we are desensitized from our pain and trauma that we aren't connected anymore. And so we want to feel. So we do things like drugs, sex, alcohol, a sedentary lifestyle, right? Because we're like, no. Lack of sleep. These are all self-harm. Lack of sleep, overworking, physical fighting, verbally abusing one another or ourselves. We do these things to feel alive, to feel some sort of emotion that we understand as a form of awakening ourselves and our bodies to the world around us. Yes and no, in a sense where a sedentary lifestyle is not going to make you feel alive, but it's basically essentially you are doing anything besides working your mental processes. Okay. But what if also all these very things are the things that are making our bodies send ourselves these nonstop feelings and emotions that we can't figure out? What if the reason we cannot accept and be patient with all that is unsolved in our hearts is not because we can't figure it out, but it's because the thought of answering the questions of why we were abused and mistreated feels like solving would be a pain worse than the actual action. You see, we can understand the destructive behaviors we have that stem from our traumatic experiences. We can understand that our bodies have become disconnected from our minds and awareness, but simply understanding will not make us stop the destructive disconnection or behavior. We can understand that being abused, whether it's physical or emotional, is unhealthy. But is that really enough for a woman or a man to feel calm and patient knowing that they've solved that part and the rest will be answered gradually? I know a girl, okay, who would get so anxious, she would begin pulling her hair out. Like, I'm talking chunks, okay? Chunks upon chunks of her hair. It would be pulled out to where half of her head would be bald at one point in her life or another, right? She would be told over and over again that she needed to stop, that she was doing something that was harmful to herself. She tried over and over again to stop. But just as soon as one patch would begin to come back in, there would be a new patch that she pulled out. She knew that it was harmful and she knew that she just needed to fucking stop it already. But again, simply knowing isn't enough. So it appears we have to go deeper with this quote than just what we were going over, right? Could it be that understanding and being patient with our unsolved questions and knowing things will be solved gradually comes from integrating just regular, everyday sensory experiences, such as touching, feeling, tasting, smelling, grabbing, seeing, hearing, in order to feel safe and secure within our bodies and ultimately ourselves? So in order to answer this question, we first need to ask what Kolk says. What happens in the brains of trauma survivors when they are not thinking about the past? So there are actually studies with neuroimaging that have shown that trauma actually affects your sensory self-awareness. These studies go over the default mode network. So you may be asking, what the fuck is the default mode network? It can also be called the default state network. I know you want to know what I'm talking about because I had to look that shit up too, okay? I was like, what the fuck? So neuroscientificallychallenged.com states that the default mode network is a group of brain regions that seem to show lower levels of activity when we are engaged in a particular task, such as paying attention, but higher levels of activity when we are awake and not involved in any specific mental exercise. So they found that these areas, when they're able to be activated, help you activate your sense of self. Kolk actually calls it the mohawk of self-awareness because this network starts in between your eyes and swoop, it goes up and over to the back of your brain. Sounds like one of Dora Explorer's adventures, right? Can't go around it, can't go through it. We have to go up and over to get to the back where we have the posterior cingulate, which grounds us to where we are in the present. So can we guess what that would be connected to? Shocker. It's connected to our medial prefrontal cortex, which, as we talked about previously, that's where we're able to focus on the internal self-experiences, such as our thinking, sociability, our emotional regulator, and your overall motivation. It is where you are able to process and decipher situations and experiences from a self-aware and regulated perspective. It is also where chaos can take place with people with trauma. Shocker. Because their processing during situations becomes broken and scattered due to an inability to focus and think critically, which we've talked about, right? When we're having those impulses that go up, they kind of break up as they get up to that prefrontal cortex. And because it's like, whoo, so many thoughts, so many feelings. Oh my gosh, chaos, right? Because of all of our trauma. My precious. Just kidding, guys. We interrupt this wonderful podcast episode by yours truly, me, in order to let you know about my program. My program is the 6-week challenge to prioritize you, not your kids, not your significant others, not your friends, not your coworkers, not your boss, yourself. This is about building who you are, becoming self-aware, self-sufficient, being able to validate yourself, not needing validation from others, figuring out where your anxiety really comes from, your agitation, your irritability, your overall frustration, your feelings of inadequacy, like you aren't enough, like you're never going to be enough, like you have this foggy brain and you can't fucking think straight. You don't feel secure, safe, loved, sexy in your own skin, with yourself. You constantly feel like you need somebody else around you to validate who you are. If any of that sounds pretty familiar to you, or like oh shit, that's me, then I suggest you hit me up, let me know so we can get started. I'll send you an application. You can fill it out, set a transformation session with me just to get to know one another, guys. No pressure. I truly know what it feels like, and I want to be there for you. So let a bitch know. Holla! So getting back to the default state network, this mohawk runs through the center of the brain and includes the insula, the parietal lobes, and the anterior cingulate. These areas of the brain are connected and process and feel sensations from all parts of your body. they all have their own like specific functionings, but for today, the main idea is that they all take part in our overall consciousness and our sense of self. Through the neuroimaging studies, the researchers found that in individuals with histories of chronic trauma, the same regions show sharply decreased activity, making it difficult to register internal states and assessing the personal relevance of incoming information. What's even crazier is that people with severe early life trauma had almost no lighting up, quote unquote, right, in this area of the brain. It didn't light up. That means that people with trauma going all the way back, they were not able to understand feelings and emotions properly because they disconnected from it to ensure their survival from the unknown feelings of the terror that they've experienced in the past. So the problem with that is because it's not like they can turn it off and on whenever the hell they feel like. Their brain, in turn, what it does with everyday activities is that it actually makes it next to impossible to have a sense of self and knowing who you are, because you're essentially closed for business in that department. You close that bank account, right? There is no longer transactions happening. So I remember when asking others for advice for the simplest things, right? It was a regular occurrence. I just wanted to know what to do. It gave me so much anxiety. Like I would get crazy anxiety to have to make my own decisions. And this was things about like my own sense of purpose and what I wanted to do with my life, essentially. I couldn't explain to myself and understand even that what my body, thoughts, and sensations were trying to tell me needed to be processed by me. I'm like walking up to people, hey, can you process my feelings and my emotions for me? I literally had lost complete sight of who I was. Hence why I named my podcast, Who the Fuck is in the Mirror? Because I remember at one point having an actual panic attack, just looking in the mirror, staring at myself, and really just asked myself, who the fuck even is this girl? You're not fucking Angela. Literally, that's what I was telling myself. I was like crying. And it makes me just want to hold that version of me, that point in my life. I just want to hug myself because I was crying and so frustrated because I looked at myself and I said, where the fuck are you going with your life? What the fuck have you done? What happened to you to make you feel so out of place with who you are and what made you this way? I'm telling you, it can really make a person feel so terrified and lost within themselves. There is no greater fear than complete confusion of your sense of self as an adult. It's bad as a child, but as an adult, when you have responsibilities and you're in charge of other humans, it is the most terrifying thing to not have that sense of self. So people who haven't been through this sort of experience can never truly understand how scatterbrained and anxious a person can feel because of this impossible feeling of doom and lack of control of their behaviors and actions. They want to reason. They want to understand what is going on inside of themselves, but all the understanding and reasoning has just caused more anxiety and disconnect with self because they can't calm themselves down enough to fucking understand. Their prefrontal cortex is not able to fucking get it for them. Their relationships, and I'm speaking from my own personal experience, filled with emptiness, defensiveness, victim behaviors, argumentative. Ooh, I'm good at that one. Or even complete shutdown whenever things get hard because they can't pick and choose when to shut off their default state network and turn it on, right? They can't turn it off, turn it on, because that's the sense of who they are. And if they don't know who the fuck they are, how the fuck are they going to control it? It's set to automatic mode, guys. Kolk says the structures in charge of self-recognition may be knocked out along with the structures related to self-experience. Like, it just hits. How the fuck can we know who we are? How can we experience fully that sense of self and be confident in that if we first are not able to recognize? So 20th century body therapist Moshe Feldenkrais said this: you can't do what you want till you know what you're doing. In other words, in order to feel present and secure within yourself and who you are, you have to regain your sense of self and become aware of what your body and brain are trying to tell you. If we were to understand all of our everyday senses and have a feeling of safety, security, and completeness within our own bodies, our brains could be relaxed and able to comprehend more fully what simply accepting the questions within ourselves today have the impact on beginning the steps to feeling whole and allowing a gradual answer to come in its own time. In order to do this, we need to reactivate our account. You can't build a savings account to have security and a sense of safety if your account is fucking closed. So we start with step 1, open and reactivate your account. William James argues that the core of our self-awareness rests on the physical sensations that convey the inner states of the body, the people we have around us, the sounds we hear, the images we see, the change in temperature when we go from indoors to outdoors. All of these and more have a profound effect on our feelings and actions and where our attention and focus is and shifts to, right? Yeah, we all know that. So if we're trying to focus on that show or a conversation and kids run up and start yelling and screaming, or you're inside in the cool and you step outside and are reminded that it's fucking summertime and you wore pants today and a long sleeve shirt because why not? It was nice inside, right? It's gotta be nice outside. Or you're at work and you need to take a breather, but you're not able to step away. These situations have self-awareness connected to them and stem from inside your body so that you're able to process and act outwardly according to the situation. The problem is that when you have trauma added to these equations, understanding and acting appropriately becomes more challenging. We are trying to listen to our conversation or watch our show, right? But the kids make us snap. Or we go outside and we become irritable and grouchy and bitchy. Or we're at work and lash out at a coworker. Those are the 3 scenarios that I gave, right? This is what they're doing. This is how we react. You see, when you cannot connect your body and what's going on, such as the chemicals being transported in the blood or the nerve impulses shooting throughout our bodies because we have no self-awareness and we can't recognize who we are and what we need, You aren't able to simply shift your attention to that child who needs 10 seconds of fucking validation and they're good. You can't communicate to yourself that all you have to do is change into a sundress or shorts and you'll be good. You aren't able to stop what you're doing at work to take a breather alone and refocus and you'll be fucking good. All because you have shut down that self-awareness that allows you to listen to your fucking body and your needs and what will benefit all aspects of your life. Your brain is in charge of deciphering all the messages being received and commands that are being made and is doing it in an appropriate way and making those changes how it sees fit. We're generally not even aware that we're taking these changes in our brains or that they're taking place in general. But areas like the subcortical regions, these are like you have the hippocampus, amygdala, hypothalamus, and basal ganglia. We've talked about the hippocampus and amygdala, but we'll go into that a little further. But basically, the subcortical regions, they're responsible for your breathing, your heart beating, you digesting food, secreting hormones to the bloodstream, immune system. So the hippocampus, as we know, is responsible for learning, memory, can get damaged in trauma. The amygdala, that's your emotional processing center, right? That's where we get to sit there and say, right? Emotional reaction. Hippocampus is responsible for hunger, mood, thirst, growth, so much more because it's literally responsible for your hormone production and secretion. Basal ganglia, that is responsible for emotions, but also in learning and coordination, such as our motor control. So since it's responsible for the learning, it also has a huge role in addiction, since technically addiction is a learned behavior. So imagine all of these parts of the brain being disturbed by what they see as a threat or what they've learned to be a potential threat. Utter chaos. We're not even aware of it because it's taking place on an automatic shift. So if what Kolk says is true and our conscious self also plays a vital role in maintaining our inner equilibrium, then we need to register what physical sensations and feelings we are having so we may act on them to essentially feel safety and security. We must first feel physically safe in the present moment so that we are able to have equilibrium and homeostatic balance and become more equipped to our underlying sense of self and a deeper self-awareness. Now, we're going to be talking more about this next week in part 2 for chapter 6. We'll be talking about the self under threat, owning your life. We'll also be talking about your feelings, depersonalization. We're going to be talking about all of that. But for this episode, what I want you to take from this is that we must first have a sense of safety now in the present in order to feel safe enough to have a sense of self-awareness, to learn ourselves as if we're children learning ourselves for the first time. I don't know if you've seen Inside Out 2, but it's so fucking true. So she goes through puberty, right? And when she goes through puberty, she is hit with 4 more characters. You have boredom, you have anxiety, you have envy, and shit. You have another one too. I don't know. I don't remember. Damn it. Embarrassment. you have embarrassment. So you have these 4 characters that come into play when she goes through it. So anxiety just fucking takes over and is like overthinking everything, literally can't think clearly, right? If you are not able to regulate yourself because you don't know who the fuck you are and you have no sense of self, then how the fuck are you ever going to be calm knowing that you don't have all your fucking questions answered and that they're eventually going to happen? You must first deal with the present moment, with who you are right now. Begin with feeling safe. If you are not in a safe environment, how are you ever going to have that sense of self? You can't focus on that. I mean, come on, the lady, what about that lady, the mom that lifts up the fucking car with the adrenaline rush, right? You really think she's going to be saying, oh shit, 10 years down the road, I'm still going to have back pain? No, because all she's thinking about is I'm going to save my fucking child. When you're constantly trying to fight for that safety, how the fuck are you ever going to feel your sense of self or know who you are and what you need? Start with safety. And that, I think we're going to stop there. Next week, we'll go over how to find that sense of safety. I mean, there's different techniques. I mean, you could do yoga, meditation, massaging is a really big one that Kolk talks about, which makes a lot of sense. Honestly, like a lot of stuff that he talks about, we know, but we don't really fucking know, right? It's like knowing different words like trauma, vulnerability, different kind of brain structures, things like that. We know what they are, but do we really know what they are? So next week, we're going to dive into that a little more on how exactly are we going to fucking find that sense of self? How are we going to connect to our bodies and find that present belonging for ourselves? I hope that this was enlightening for you guys. Don't be shy. Remember to follow me, like, comment, all the fucking things, share with your friends, binge listen, and have a fucking awesome rest of your day.